How to form an LLC or C-Corp as an international entrepreneur not living in the US. That's what we're going to talk about in this video, where I'm going to share how easy it actually is to do in 2025. I'm going to give you recommendations to what company to use and walk you through the process, and it's super easy. So follow along and I show you exactly how to start doing business in the US. For many years I wanted to do business in the US, but I didn't know where to start. I was sitting in Europe and all I knew was that a company in the US was an LLC or C-Corp, and I didn't really know much more. I didn't know where to start or how to form a company. But then I started doing some research a couple of years ago and actually formed a company back then. So in this video we're going to cover if you should choose LLC or C-Corp, what state you should form your company in, because this is something you have to decide if it has to be in Delaware, Wyoming, or somewhere else. And then also we're going to cover things such as registered agent and other things that is important regarding the compliance and making sure your business is running the correct way. And also I'm going to cover what bank you should choose when doing a business from abroad. There is a few companies out there that can help you if you are not in the US. So I'm also going to talk a bit about that, but let's get into it. So the first thing is, should you choose LLC or C-Corp? And this really depends on what your intent and purpose is in the US. So if you're planning to go to the US and just run a traditional business, you just want to form a company, sell some products one way or another, then the LLC might be the better fit for you. But if you're planning to go to the US, raise money, build a startup, and it has to grow fast and all of these things, then the C-Corp might be a better fit. So this is something you need to decide. What is your plan in the US? And based on that, you know if you should choose a LLC or C-Corp. So the reason why a lot of people choose the LLC is because it's like very simple, it's flexible, it protects you a lot as the owner, and in general just a basic setup, like the easiest setup there is. On the other hand, the C-Corp is really investor friendly. It makes it easy to issue stocks and other things that makes it really a good setup for investors. That's also why a lot of startups, or almost all startups, they are C-Corps, because it is in the interest that it's easy for them to issue the stocks and work with different investors and all. And you can't do that in the same way with the LLC. But I'm not going to go too much into detail in this because there's other people that knows a lot more than me about this. But this is like the basics. You need to ask yourself, what is the intent of going to the US? Is it run your own business, 100% ownership and just like the traditional way? Or are you looking to get invested? Before we continue with the list, can you hit the like and subscribe button? That would help me so much make more content like this. I would really appreciate it. So go ahead, like and subscribe, and then let's continue with the video. Thank you. The next thing is to decide what state you will be running your business from. And again, this depends on C-Corp and LLC. And what I would recommend, and I know it sounds a little random, that is Wyoming. And the reason for this is because it is low annual fees, the compliance is easy, and in general a good setup if you're not living in the US and you just need to register somewhere in the US. So then Wyoming is a good choice. On the other hand, if you have a C-Corp, then what is very common is that you registered it in Delaware. And the reason for this is because this is the most common setup for startups looking for investors. If a startup is looking to get an investment, let's say in the Bay Area, and then the investor is looking, okay, what kind of company is this? Then they know exactly how to do the paperwork if it is a Delaware C-Corp versus if it was a C-Corp in whatever other state. And so it is really because they all want to have the same structure. They know the rules, they know the compliance and all. And for that reason, most of these C-Corps have the Delaware C-Corp setup. But again, you can choose whatever state you want. You can also choose California or other states, but some of these states have higher fees or different regulation. So this really depends on your setup and all, but generally speaking, I would say if you have a LLC registered in Wyoming, if you have a C-Corp registered in Delaware. That is my general recommendations, but again, other people know more about this. Then another thing that is important is to have a bank account in the US. And here I would recommend Mercury Bank. This is the bank I used before moving to the US. It was really easy to set up the bank account. There was no fees whatsoever. It was just a good basic setup. I got a debit card and had like a fine start for the US and being able to receive money in the US and a US bank account. So I've added a link here to Mercury Bank where you can look a little more. Again, it's super easy and definitely something I would recommend. There is also other companies that is catered international entrepreneurs that want a bank account with a US LLC or C-Corp, but my experience was with Mercury Bank, and for that reason I recommend them. So I think this covers like the basics for now about forming a company in the US. There's other things later on that you need to know more about for the compliance. Also, you need something called a registered agent, and basically this is that you have a real person or entity taking care of your letters, so that when the government or anyone else sends you letters, then you'll receive them. And sometimes you need to pay like an annual fee, maybe it's $100 or $50 for this, but this is something you'll see as an add-on service to a lot of these companies that is specialized in forming companies for international entrepreneurs. But so this is just small thing to be aware of. So you might be wondering, what is the overall budget for forming a company in the US? And again, this depends on the state, it depends on the company you use to form your company, but I would say the minimum, maybe $400 or so. And then of course you're gonna have some annual fees, but again, if you choose, let's say Wyoming, then your annual fees will be relatively low. But now I just quickly want to show you how the process is of forming the company. I'm going to share my screen with you here so you can see how it is. I'm going to use Doola in this example. This is the company I would recommend if you're planning to start a business in the US. It is super easy, but yeah, follow along and I show you the process and how easy it really is. So when you get here, you just create an account or like log in, and then the first thing you'll see here is, as we talked about before, do you want to form an LLC or a C-Corp? And then here again you can see there is the pros and cons of the different company types. So again, if you're a small business and want more flexibility, then the LLC is a better choice. If you're a startup fundraising from investors, then the C-Corp is the right choice. So let's just take the LLC now, since it's the most common one. We can go back maybe and I show you also the C-Corp, how it works. So then we do the LLC, and then yeah, it's gonna ask you what name. I just say test company, and then it's gonna ask you what state you want to form the company in, as we just talked about. Here it's suggesting Wyoming, as I mentioned before. And again, it is, as you also see here, it says Wyoming is recommended for simplified formation, lower annual operating cost and flexibility, no corporate income tax or annual franchise tax. So this is something that will keep your costs low. It will be easy for you to maintain and things like that. So I would recommend that. So let's just go ahead and say next. Solutions. Let's just take the starter one because we just want to start a company basically. So you see here, this is including the formation, so so the paperwork. You're gonna get your EIN number, which is kind of the tax number or like your ID for your company. And then also you see the registered agent service that I mentioned before, so that you have an address to receive letters and things like that. So let's just go ahead here. And then you're being asked, would you choose an expedited EIN service so that you get your paperwork faster? And this is like $300 extra. I'll just say no thanks, and then it's up to 8 weeks. It's a little slow, but it's okay. And, I can do other work meanwhile waiting for this. And then here we have the overview. You see here, you have your name, you have the entity type, you have the state, you have the subscription you chose here, $297 annually. Then there's the state fees, that is $103.75. And then over here you have the total cost, that is $400.75 just to form a, so it really doesn't have to be expensive to form a company in 2025. And again, I would really recommend you using Doola for this because it's super easy. It is probably the best option out there. Again, there's other companies and there's pros and cons, but my experience is that this is the better option. So basically that's it. You can go ahead and move forward with this if this is what you want. And then basically you just go ahead and pay and finalize this. I'll also just quickly show you the difference if I choose the C-Corp, so you also get to see the cost difference here. So let's just go back here, and then we'll see here C-Corp, and then we go next, and then again the test company. And then now you can see it recommends Delaware. So then if we take Delaware, you can see here the state fee is $160, so it's a little higher. I can also just show you here if I took other, then I could choose California. But then here you can see you have to pay $800 for the franchise tax to California, because in general California have high taxes on a lot of things, and this is just one example of it. So I would just choose Delaware because this is the better setup, and as I mentioned before, this is the most common setup for investors and startups. So definitely my recommendations to you. So then if we go here next, and then again we have the same things here. You want to choose one of these other solutions or just the starter thing. I would just recommend the starter one. Again, the other things is something maybe you can add on later just to be fully compliant, and if you see growth with your company and all. I would just start out with this. And then yeah, we just go hit next. And the same question here, you want the EIN faster. And then now we have the same thing. You see here now it's a C-Corp, it's in Delaware. It's the $297 again, and then now it's $160 state fee at Delaware. And you see here the total cost is $457 now, because again the state fee is a little higher. So this is basically the process. After that, you just put in your card information and start the whole process. And then after, they're gonna ask you, what is your address, and they need ID and different things like that. Also, don't forget to use my code that I have here in the description. And then after 8 weeks or so, you will have a company up and running and ready to do business. I also quickly want to show you the bank I would recommend, and that is the Mercury bank. So I have it right here. You can see you can get a bank account for $0 a month. You get banking, you can send money, you can get a debit card and things like that. So I think this is really a good setup. It was super easy for me and really what I would recommend. If you end up moving to the US or do more business in the US, of course, then you can choose other banks. You can have Chase for business and things like that. But if you're based somewhere else in the world, then I think Mercury Bank is a perfect option for you. Again, I've added links in the description so you can check that out as well. So I think this covers it for this video. I hope this gave you a little introduction to how to form a company in the US and the different company forms. Again, I'm no expert. I'm just sharing my experience being an entrepreneur, wanting to do business in the US. And this was the process I went through. And if you think to do business in the US, this is what I would recommend you to do. Feel free to hit the like and subscribe button. That would help me a lot make more content like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in one of my next videos. Thank you so much. Bye bye.